You know, Coca-Cola is the brand that basically owns Christmas, right? I mean, they practically invented the Santa Claus we all know and love. Well, they just dropped a new holiday ad, and it was so bad it actually made people thirsty for Pepsi. Yeah, you heard that right. This was supposed to be their big, flashy, AI-generated leap into the future of advertising. So what went so horribly wrong?
I mean, look at this comment right here. AI slop. Glad I drink Pepsi. Wow. That just says it all, doesn't it? This comment gets right to the heart of it. The backlash wasn't just, I don't like this. It was immediate. It was visceral. People weren't just turned off by the ad, they were actively running to Coke's biggest competitor. This wasn't just some small oopsie. This was a massive, self-inflicted wound.
So you've got this iconic brand, right? A company that literally shaped how we see the holidays. They go all in on this super futuristic, cutting-edge ad. And the result? A total disaster. A commercial so hated it makes you start asking some really big questions. About AI, about creativity, and what we, the audience, actually want to see.
All right, so first things first, let's just look at the raw, unfiltered public reaction. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty tech stuff or the corporate strategy, we gotta understand just how badly this thing bombed.
Okay, just look at the numbers on YouTube. It's brutal. We're talking a 1 to 10 like to dislike ratio. Think about that for a second. For every one person who liked it, 10 people hit the dislike button. This isn't a case of some people liked it, some didn't. No, this is a landslide. It's basically the digital version of an entire stadium booing a team off the field.
And if you dive into the comments, you see the same words popping up again and again. Horrendous, uncanny, soulless, nightmarish. People were pointing out all those classic weird AI artifacts. The polar bear's fur looked like it was crawling. Objects in the background would just melt into each other. There was zero continuity. The whole thing felt less like holiday magic and more like some kind of glitchy, bizarre fever dream.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. The big selling point for AI, right, is always speed. It's supposed to save a ton of time, a ton of human effort. But that's not exactly what happened here. When you actually look at how this ad was made, that whole promise just kind of falls apart.
So that leads to the big question, doesn't it? Okay, fine. The ad was a mess. But, hey, at least it was fast and cheap to make, right? They must have saved a fortune by not hiring human animators. Well, you might be surprised. 720, just let that number sit there for a second. 720, that's how many hours of pure, dedicated rendering time it took to churn out this 1-minute video.
Let me put that in perspective for you. 720 hours. That's 30 full days. A whole month of a super powerful computer running non-stop 24/7 just to create a single minute of video. One analyst called it a digital brute force attack, and honestly, that's the perfect way to describe it. It's not elegant, it's just throwing a ridiculous amount of computer power at something and basically praying that what comes out makes sense.
And look, this wasn't some simple type 1 prompt and you're done situation. Not even close. A whole team of people had to use a bunch of different AI tools, Runway, Midjourney, you name it. They wrote over 70,000 different prompts to generate all the bits and pieces. Then they had to stitch it all together. This was a super complex, very human-intensive, and incredibly expensive process.
Which of course brings us to the money. If it wasn't really faster and it was super complex, was it at least cheaper? Well, this is where that whole idea of AI being this magic cost-cutting tool gets really murky.
So let's just compare these two methods side by side. With traditional animation, what are you paying for? Skilled people, right? Artists. The trade-off is you get pixel-perfect control and a really polished, consistent look. Now, with the AI approach Coke took, your biggest cost driver isn't people. It's a giant bill from a cloud computing company for all that processing power. You give up almost all creative control. You're kind of at the mercy of the AI model, and what you get is that glitchy, unstable look we all saw. So when you add up the cost of the human team plus that insane cloud bill, yeah, the final price could easily be the same as, if not more than, what a traditional animation studio would charge.
Okay, so let's recap. It's not really faster, it's not necessarily cheaper, and the public absolutely despised the final product. So the million-dollar question is, why? Why would a company like Coca-Cola do this? And even crazier, why would they double down on it? To answer that, we have to look at their official strategy.
And here we have it, straight from the horse's mouth. Their chief marketing officer said, before we would start a year in advance. Now, you can get it done in around a month. So you see, the big win for them wasn't about the computer's rendering time, it was about the human project timeline. They took a process that usually takes a full year, planning, approvals, production, and crunched it down into about a month. For a giant company like Coke, that kind of speed and agility is a huge deal.
And this next quote really tells you everything you need to know about their mindset. They're saying, the genie is out of the bottle. They see AI as this unstoppable train that's already left the station. And in their minds, they have to be on it, even if the ride is super bumpy at first. They're basically willing to take the hit from the public backlash because they see it as the cost of being an innovator, of being on the cutting edge.
And this is where you see the massive disconnect. On one hand, you have Coca-Cola saying, hey, the core of this, the engine, is still human storytellers. But what does the public hear? They hear, nothing says holiday spirit like laying off your whole graphic arts department. It doesn't matter how the company tried to spin it, the public's perception was crystal clear. You're using machines to replace human artists, probably to save some money.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second. This whole controversy, this huge firestorm, it's about way more than just one bad commercial. What this really exposes is a much bigger and, frankly, a much more fascinating cultural shift that's going on right under our noses.
Think about it. Our feeds, the whole internet, it's getting flooded with AI-generated stuff. Images, text, videos. Some people are starting to call it AI slop. And as that happens, a really powerful counter-movement is starting to build. People are starting to crave things that are real. There's this growing appreciation for anything that feels genuinely human-made.
And this comment just sums it up perfectly. Someone wrote, I'd rather see a bad, authentic pic with a cheap camera than this. And that's it, right there. That's the new mindset. It's not about being technically perfect anymore. People are starting to value authenticity, even if it's a little messy or rough, way more than some slick, polished, but ultimately sold as piece of content.
And you know what? This is why a multi-million-dollar ad from a global giant like Coke can trigger the exact same weird, unsettling feeling as seeing a bizarre AI-generated sign at your local shawarma place. In both situations, there's this disconnect. You're looking at something that's trying to pretend it's real, but your brain knows it's fake. And that little bit of distrust in the image, it can easily become distrust in the brand itself.
So this all leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? Right now, AI video is still kind of glitchy. You can spot it a mile away. But what happens when it gets perfect? When you literally can't tell the difference between what's real and what's AI generated? Are we going to want that flawless perfection? Or will living in that world make us crave the beautiful, messy, wonderful imperfections of real human connection even more? I think that is the real story this whole Coke ad fiasco is telling us.